Hello and welcome to a Squirrel Plays. It's me, the Squirrel, and yes, I'm late, I know, but hey, we made it to video 3 so far, and if I could make it to a whole 10 videos, then I might celebrate and buy myself a pizza. Anyway, today I'd like to spend some time on the video game side again and talk about roguelites. Now, if you've played any video games in the past few years, odds are you have either played one of these games yourself, or you have at least seen them. At this point, they're kind of hard to avoid as a lot of companies are pushing these out, and there's a reason for that. They're a lot cheaper to make in the grand scheme of things. Due to their design, they can squeeze several hours out of a player by using a minimal amount of content, but we'll cover that as we dig into it. However, there is something I would like to clarify before we jump in, and that is the difference between a roguelike with a K and a roguelite with a T. So even if I get the definitions wrong, you'll at least know what I'm referring to and trying to say throughout this video. My understanding is as follows. A roguelike with a K is a game where if you die, you actually die. That's it. You don't get any upgrades. You go all the way back to the beginning, do not pass go, do not collect $200. If you were to take out any randomizing or procedural generation, it would basically be an old NES game such as Contra. You remember those games? The ones where if you ran out of lives and that was it? Good times. Anyway, if that's the case, then that means a roguelite with a T is the one where if you die, you get to keep a portion of your points and upgrade your character so you can progress a little farther on your next run. Now, granted, both of these types are usually ripe with some form of randomization to them, such as throwing you in different levels, or the levels themselves are randomly generated, and or the monsters thrown at you are also randomized. However, that's not what we'll be talking about today, despite those things having issues all on their own. What we'll be focusing on is that separating factor of what happens at death. So in case you haven't figured it out yet, I do have a small problem with roguelites. Not only is the market entirely flooded with them, I find them flawed by design. When I originally sat down to write out my thoughts and plan this video, I had a handful of issues I wanted to discuss about roguelites. The thing is, I was a few pages deep and I had only covered one issue. That means either I'm extremely long-winded or it's a really big issue, or both. And that issue is the gameplay loop. Now, like I said, I hadn't originally planned on making this whole thing about that single issue, so there might be a part 2 on roguelites, but don't hold me to it. For now, let's just talk about the gameplay loop that is in roguelites. And calling it gameplay is being extremely generous, all things considered. Now, gameplay loops can either make or break a game. We've all seen it before, roguelite or not. Sometimes a game will get you into a grind, and the process that requires looping just pushes you away, causing you to forget all about the game with no desire to return to it ever again. On the other hand, some games implement a loop so well that we completely miss it, or we just don't care. We get caught in that loop. We get absorbed, almost as if we're stuck in some kind of trance. We look at the clock, shocked to see how much time has passed. We lie to ourselves, saying we'll do just this one other thing, then we'll turn it off. Before we know it, it's been another half hour, then another, and then another, and another, and another, and another. The day is gone, night has arrived, and now we have to make the decision. Do we go to bed so we can function the next day, or do we keep having the time of our lives and pay the price tomorrow? If I haven't made it clear by now, allow me to elaborate. Gameplay loops are not bad. They're a tool, like many other things, that can be used to make a wonderful game. On the other hand, gameplay loops can also be used for a more nefarious purpose, destroying a game from within and making it nothing more than an empty shell, a hardened exterior with no reward within. And that, my friends, is your average roguelite. They're hollow, they're empty, barren, they demand hours and hours of gameplay and give you so little in return. Some of you might be asking, but what if I had fun? And to that I would ask, what if I told you that it was possible to have all that fun and more, but without this senseless loop? Now, before I go into that detail, allow me to be clear. If there is a game you enjoy playing, don't let some random squirrel, or any other rodent for that matter, tell you that you can't enjoy it. You're allowed to enjoy things. So long as your joy isn't hurting anyone or ruining somebody else's good time, then it's probably all good. But I do ask that you hear me out, because you might discover the things about those games you enjoy are actually being kept from you. That, or at least let me finish, and then you can make your case in the comments below why you think roguelites are actually a good design choice. That's what we're here for, after all. Let me explain in greater detail what I mean about a senseless gameplay loop. Let's have a look at a game from the days of old so this squirrel can say, back in my day. The game I'd like to use for this example is Mega Man X. Considering I really don't have an audience at this point, or at least I don't as of writing this or recording it, I don't know if this example will hit the mark or completely miss. Regardless, if you're watching this at some point in the future and you're thinking, Mega Man X isn't a roguelite, well, you'd be absolutely correct. It isn't, but there's lots of games out there currently that are basically this, but with the roguelite mechanics tossed into it. Now, for the older rodents out there, some of you may remember this game. For the younger ones, or at least the younger ones that haven't dived into older games, allow me to break it down the best I can. There were several Mega Man games, starting with Mega Man 1 on the NES, and it was soon followed by Mega Man 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then eventually X1 through X3 on the SNES. Followed by some more entries that we don't talk about. So why did I pick X1? Well, really, I could use 1, 2, or 3 as they all follow the same formula and do a fantastic job of it, but X1 just seemed like the right choice as it was the first in the X series. So when you start a new game, you're tossed into an intro stage. No difficulty settings, no options, no character select, nothing. You are Mega Man X and you have a war to fight. The intro stages, especially the one in Mega Man X, are designed to let you know what's in store, what's different this time, how did we change since the last game, what lies ahead. If you want to watch a video on the brilliance that is Mega Man X's intro level, I can't recommend enough Ego Raptor's video Sequelitis, Mega Man Classic vs. Mega Man X. It's an older video, but it still holds very true to this day. He talks about a few other things, but a big chunk of it is about that exact intro stage, and it's pretty fantastic. I'll put a link in the description. But anyway, after the intro stage, you're then greeted with a screen that lets you choose one of 8 levels, each complete with its own boss. And this is what made the Mega Man game so interesting back in the day. It wasn't a linear game in the sense that you went from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 and so forth and so on. No. You could choose what order you wanted to go in. You could make the path you saw fit to complete the game. Granted, there were more advantages to taking some routes than there were others, but you still had that freedom. Another key feature was that at the end of each stage there was a boss, and each boss had a weakness. That weakness, however, was a weapon you got from one of the other bosses. So once you defeated your first boss, if you wanted to make your life a little easier, you tried to figure out which boss was weak to that weapon, making your fight a lot easier. Now, the route I usually went in Mega Man X was I started with Chill Penguin, mostly to get the dash boots midways through his stage. Once he was defeated, I would take his weapon and take on Spark Mandrill, followed by Armored Armadillo, Launch Octopus, Boomer Kawanger, Sting Chameleon, Storm Eagle, and then finally Flame Mammoth. As I progressed through these stages, not only was I acquiring a weapon from each boss, I was also finding hidden capsules that upgraded my armor and gave me new abilities, such as the dash boots I mentioned from Chill Penguin's stage, a helmet that could break blocks, armor that would reduce damage, or a new X-Buster that allowed me to not only create a larger charge shot, but to charge those weapons I had acquired from the bosses. On top of that, I was also finding items that boosted my total health pool, as well as some energy tanks I could hold in reserve to heal myself should something disastrous happen. And the whole time I was doing all of this, my ears were being blessed by some of the greatest music I have heard to this day. But the road didn't end once Flame Mammoth was defeated, no sir. After that, we were taken to a place that wasn't even on the map. We had to go to Sigma's Fortress, where another 3 stages awaited us. Not only were there 3 stages, we had 3 completely new bosses to take on, and we had to fight the original 8 bosses again. It was crazy, man. My little tiny squirrel brain couldn't handle it. I was on the edge of my seat till the very end. After those 3 stages, we then climbed our way up to the final fight, the final boss, that is Sigma. And yes, we got 3 whole fights there as well, the first being his canine companion, then Sigma himself, then Sigma in a more powerful form. Victory did not come easy for our little blue hero. But what is this, a review of Mega Man X or a discussion on roguelites? Well, I'm giving you all that so in case you've never played the game, you at least have somewhat of an idea of what it was like. But why? Why do you need to know all of that? Because I'm going to take that game and convert it into the modern roguelite. So if Mega Man X were a roguelite, what would it look like? For starters, I'm pretty sure the intro stage would be completely gone. You'd be thrown right into the first stage and that'd be the end of it. Decent intro stages and tutorials hidden within great gameplay are a thing of the past and long gone. Now, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to say this roguelite does not randomize the bosses, meaning we'll be following the same pattern that I did before. Though if it makes you feel any better, we can say the stages themselves are still randomized, just the boss at the end of each stage will remain constant. So you start off, you're running, you're jumping, you're shooting, you're just having a good old time. You get to the first boss, which we will say is Chill Penguin. Now keep in mind, we did not get those dash boots that I mentioned before. No, that's not how roguelites work. You got to die and buy them. So you have your shootout with Chill Penguin, but you just can't quite seem to beat him. You die, and you're thrown back to the beginning. However, after your death, you're greeted by some sort of shopkeeper. He or she informs you that you can spend your points you collected during your run. The thing is, whatever you do not spend is lost to the void. But fear not, for the first item they have are those wonderful dash boots that you need to do literally anything in this game. So you buy your dash boots and head out for another run. This time you defeat Chill Penguin, though just by the skin of your teeth. You then make your way through the next stage and you meet Spark Mandrill, only to get stomped into the ground again, and back you go to the mysterious shopkeeper that will gladly take your points. You buy a couple upgrades, including more health and maybe a bit of a damage booster, then you go back for another run. You defeat Chill Penguin again, make your way to Spark Mandrill, and this time you win. You're thrust into the third stage and you die before even getting halfway through. You're back at the shop again and boost your stats a little bit. You jump back in, you defeat Chill Penguin and Spark Mandrill once more, and this time you make it to the third boss. You stand toe-to-toe with Armored Armadillo, and this time you win, only to die seconds later in the fourth stage. Now, do you see where I'm going with this? The only thing added to a game by making it a roguelite is senseless padding. This results in inflated playtimes that only exist due to bad design. And just to drive that point home, let's put some numbers on it. Continuing our example with Mega Man X and only looking at the basic 8 stages, let's say each stage takes 10 minutes for easy math. In the original game, that's 80 minutes of gameplay. Now, how long would that take if Mega Man X were a roguelite? Well, in the spirit of keeping numbers simple, let's say on each run you attempt, you at least get to the end of the stage and fight the boss. We'll ignore the concept of bad RNG, meaning you got the absolute worst temporary upgrades along the way and didn't even get to the boss. That means in the first run we would have made it to Chill Penguin, but we weren't able to beat him, so that puts us at 10 minutes. So after death, we got our dash boots and we're off to try again. This time we beat Chill Penguin and we get to Spark Mandrill only to get the beatdown. That puts us at 10 minutes from the first run plus 20 minutes for this run, assuming each stage still takes about 10 minutes. We're now up to 30 minutes of gameplay and we're only 2 bosses in. Fire up the third run and we beat Chill Penguin and Spark Mandrill only to get the beatdown by Armored Armadillo. 10 minutes for each of those stages would come out to 30 minutes plus the previous 30 minutes, and now we're at 1 full hour. On run number 4, we will repeat the previous process, taking our newly purchased upgrades and beating Armored Armadillo and making our way to Launch Octopus. Whether we win or die, that adds another 40 minutes to our running time, so 40 minutes plus the previous 60 minutes puts us at a whopping total of 100 minutes of gameplay. That's 20 minutes more than the original game gave us, but we only used half of the basic content. That's ignoring the intro stage and the entirety of Sigma's Fortress. And this is why modern game developers would remove the other 4 remaining stages and either sell them later as DLC or use them as a PR move and distribute them as free updates, releasing the stages maybe 1 or 2 at a time. Then years later, the Sigma stages would be released as an in-game DLC package, to which the majority would praise as a good deal and continued support. Meanwhile, back in Christmas of 1993, we got all of that and more on day 1 without the senseless gameplay loop. So ask yourself, did you enjoy the jumping, shooting, upgrading, beating bosses, and battling? Or did you enjoy dying repeatedly and doing the same thing over and over and over again? If you enjoyed the first part, well, congratulations, you enjoy fun games, not roguelites. So allow me to go on a bit of an unguided rant, if you will. Roguelites, or at least the bad ones, put you through a grind. They force you to die over and over and over again and slowly upgrade your character so you can get a little farther each time you play. Some JRPGs require you to fight mobs over and over and over again in order to level up your characters so you can defeat the next boss. So what is the difference between the two? Both require a grind, so why might I be okay with one and not the other? Well, the thing is, I'm not okay with either one. I have enjoyed a lot of JRPGs over the years, and I'll admit I have enjoyed some of the grinding in my younger days when I had more time. There was a little something special about growing my character and watching the mobs fall easier and easier, but why am I okay with that and not doing the same thing in a roguelite? Well, there's two things I'd like to clear up on that front. One, if a JRPG forces me to go through that grind, then I do not like it. The game shouldn't force me to grind. Grinding should be an option available to me if I'm struggling. If I'm having troubles with the boss or just the current area itself, then I enjoy having the option to practice and train on the local monsters and either experiment to learn new combos or just to build my characters up. Grinding should be an option available to me for my own personal shortcomings within the game, not a requirement to progress forward. Two, in a JRPG, if I'm grinding against the local mobs for days, I'm still moving forward. With each battle and each monster slain, I have progressed that much more towards my ultimate form. It might be slow, but sure as the sun is bright, it is a step forward. It's progress, and it's my progress to keep. In a roguelite, I am robbed of that progress. It's stripped from me, torn out of my tired, worn, squirrely hands. In a roguelite, my death is the end of the fight. There is no victory screen, no fanfare as your character dances in success. You didn't win. You lost. You died. The word defeat fades onto the screen and you watch as a percentage of your coins or souls or experience or whatever the game's chosen to give you dwindles, flushing your progress down the digital drain. Your work, your time, your efforts, they're taken from you like working in a cube farm in corporate America. As you're tossed back to the beginning of the game, you get to keep a few mere scraps and are often given the choice on how to spend them. Do I want to do more damage? Do I want to take less damage? Do I want to keep a higher percentage of my earned rewards when I inevitably die again? No, what I want is to keep all of my progress. I want to move forward. I don't want to do all of this again. But this is a roguelite. This is what you're meant to do. Somewhere at some point in time, the decision was made that this is good gameplay. Repeating the same thing time and time again, slowly inching our way forward while most of our rewards are stripped away from us as we cross the finish line. That is death. So what do we do about this nonsensical loop we found ourselves in? Do we call it quits and walk away? Or do we try to enjoy the game while overlooking the fact we're casually beating our heads against the wall? I'm going to be honest, folks, it doesn't look good. The only cure for a game that forces you to grind by dying repeatedly is to remove the mechanic altogether like the cancer it is. It's just no good, pure and simple. But all is not lost. That doesn't mean roguelites can't be a thing, not by a long shot. Look at Vampire Survivors. It does it right. At no point did I feel like I needed to take my coins after death to improve myself, which is good because a lot of those coins were spent on unlocking new characters. You remember unlocking characters without real money? I've been playing the game on increased difficulties, and truth be told, I don't think I've bought all the upgrades even now. There are a couple that really help turn the tides, but none of them ever felt necessary, especially in the early stages. When you find yourself advancing to the game's hyper mode, those upgrades are a little more needed. But the thing is, by the time you get there, you have the funds for those upgrades. You grow more naturally instead of being forced to loop back and again and again and again. Vampire Survivors doesn't require a grind. It throws you into the action, and it's up to you to get better as a player. You learn the weapons by using them and playing with them, not by dying and unlocking them. It's not a senseless loop of unlocking the next upgrade. It's a challenge after a challenge after a challenge. There's achievements to get. It's a game to play. It's a breath of fresh air. Instead of trying to artificially inflate playtimes, the brains behind the game just said, "No thanks, I'm going to make a game that's actually fun." Which makes sense, right? If it's fun, you'll play it more. It's actually a pretty simple concept. That means the cure is to make something that's actually enjoyable. Don't try to trick me into thinking the game is fun. Just make a game that actually is fun. If modern companies would stop focusing so much time and effort on calculating the precise rate of which to drop the dopamine hits into my squirrel brain, they might just make a decent game. But those are just my thoughts. I know it's a little bit negative this time, but I'm seriously having trouble getting behind the roguelite train, despite the number of them I own. Most of the time they come across as a cheap attempt to make a low-effort game look like a super in-depth game with hundreds of hours of content. So what are your thoughts? How do you feel about them? Do you enjoy them? Do you think they're great as is, and I'm just a grumpy old squirrel pining for the good old days? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.